This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall. This is the broadcast from City Hall. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
This is the extraordinary meeting of the Fire Committee under Section 1.7 of the Authority's Standing Orders. I confirm that this meeting be called as a matter of urgency in order to hold a confirmation hearing for the Mayor's proposed appointee to the office of Deputy Mayor for Fire at the earliest opportunity in accordance with Section 100B4B of the Local Government Act 1972. Can I welcome everyone to this committee of the Fire Committee? Our main item of business today is to hold a confirmation hearing for the proposed appointment of Jules Pipe CBE to the office of Deputy Mayor for Fire. Please make sure your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any unnecessary interruptions this afternoon. Can I now ask our clerk, Diane Richards, if any apologies have been received for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Assemblymember Cooper, for whom Assemblymember Baker is attending as a substitute, and in accordance with Standing Order 2.4, Assemblymember Polanski will be attending virtually today.
Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 3 and ask Assembly members if they have any other disclosable pecuniary interest to declare? Can I ask Jules Pipe CBE to declare any interest relevant to the business of this meeting or in relation to the proposed appointments?
No declarations or conflicts that I'm aware of. Any other positions I hold through the GLA are recorded in my register.
Excellent. I don't think we've got anything from the Assembly members either. That brings us to item 4, the confirmation hearing in respect of the appointment of the Deputy Mayor for Fire. Can I welcome Jules Pipe CBE, the Mayor's nominee for the office, to the meeting? Welcome. The committee will be putting questions to Jules in relation to his proposed appointment. However, first I ask members to note the letters from me as Chair to the Mayor and the candidate confirming notice of a confirmation hearing. Noted. Thank you. And note the information received from the Mayor and from the proposed appointee to the Office of Deputy Mayor for Fire following the committee's request. Noted. Thank you. Thank you. Now we will move on to the question and answer session, and I will begin. So my first question to you is, what are your key aims for the role of Deputy Mayor for Fire?
Well, obviously the overarching aim is to serve the Mayor's role in keeping Londoners safe, but obviously the key part to this is what I would be focusing on within the first 12 months at the LFB, and clearly the first thing I have to do is deepen my understanding of the operation and the nature of LFB's work. I'd be doing that through a programme of visits and meetings, building strong relationships with the key people that I need to. I've already had a series of productive meetings with the Commissioner, visit to Old Kent Road Fire Station, met with the Shadow Fire Minister, Alex Norris, been to the Control Centre. So I've begun to have a sort of a beginning to have an overview of the service and its operation, but obviously there are more than 100 fire stations out there. It's 5,500 people. It's clearly something to get to grips with in the coming months. I'll obviously be having a programme of meetings with the senior staff underneath the Commissioner. Obviously, there's the inspection coming up as well. I've already met with the Chief Inspector that will be conducting the LFB inspection. So personally, that's what my priorities are.
Thank you. I mean, we'll be going into more depth about your role with the other Assembly members, but can you just give me just a quick insight on a priority that you may be having for this particular year?
Well, obviously, there's the Grenfell Phase 2 report that will be coming out shortly. We've recently had the date for that published. Obviously, the 29 recommendations in the first phase have been implemented, but there will almost certainly be further recommendations that will need to be addressed in the forthcoming report. Something that the committee will be well aware of course, is the cultural review that was conducted, and it's the implementation of that review, I think, is probably the key thing for me in the coming years, alongside the practical implementation of the things that the Grenfell inquiries has and the various reports have thrown up.
Thank you. I may come in with some extra questions as we go along, but we're going to move on to Assembly Member Hall, and we'll carry on from there.
Morning. Oh, it's afternoon now. It's afternoon. So, can you tell me, at the moment you're the Planning and Regeneration and Skills Deputy Mayor. So, how many days a week have you been spending doing that job?
Notionally 5. I think it's the hours are actually longer than 5 days a week. But yes, I do 5 days a week. I have been doing notionally 5 days a week with planning, regeneration, and skills. But of course now skills has now passed to another deputy mayor. So that's probably of the order of, it varies on the week, but probably 1 to 2 days a week that would have taken up. But of course they're all interspersed. I don't. There aren't set days for specific areas of work. Largely, my calendar, my diary has always worked around the different teams' specific. They will, for example, planning. The mayor's planning meetings are on a Monday afternoon for reasons I don't need to bore you with. That means that there has to be a specific run through on planning applications with the team and myself on the Thursday afternoon. So it's in that way that it starts populating my diary, so things get fitted around one another.
Yeah, you see, I've always thought you were a good deputy mayor in that you did dedicate yourself to what you were doing. I have always said that, and I've said it to anybody that will listen. I do think you have, and I do think you've given it your time. Equally, Fiona Twycross clearly often worked more than 3 days a week. I have absolute nothing but good things to say about her. You can see where I'm coming from.
I should have said, though, that of course this is not the full role that Fiona undertook. I'll only be looking at the fire brigade, not resilience.
Yep, I know that. Yeah. But equally, you said just now that sometimes it was longer than 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. We're looking at a job that Fiona Twycross spent more than 3 days a week doing. And she knew what she was doing, with the greatest respect, because I was on LFIPA with her long before it came into the Assembly. So she knew what she was doing before she started at a 5 day a week, and then that was reduced to 3 because she went into the House of Lords. My issue isn't you. Mm-hmm. My issue is that you were a good, or are a good planning and regeneration deputy mayor, because you give it all your time. Fiona was the same. We're now shoehorning 2 particular deputy mayors into one. You have no experience, with the greatest respect, on fire, and it is far more complicated than many would realise. I know, I've been on the board since 2010. There's a hell of a lot in it. They're just coming out of special measures, so they need a great amount of assistance. So my main concern is around the fact that you won't have the time to give it. And I can't see that you will be happy about that, because you are one of the more dedicated deputy mayors. And there's a hell of a lot to learn here. I don't think Mr. Khan has given it the due consideration that he should have done.
I think that rather than 2 into 1, in terms of time, I think it's perhaps 2/3 plus a third or a half, and that's to be seen. So let's call it a half then, but 2/3 of a job and half a job into one. So yes, it's probably, if trying to look at it mathematically, it's probably going to take more time, but I'm prepared to give it that time.
There is just so many hours in a day, though. I'll go on to the other questions, but you can see my concern. I think it's more or less saying that fire is, it's on the side, it's a small job. It isn't. Fiona made it look very easy because she knew what she was doing before she ever took it on.
What does give me some confidence, though, is in my ability to be able to do it, is the fact that I think I'll be well supported with the GLA fire team, who I think, from what I've seen, are going to be very good.
Yep, I'd agree with that, but I still, I do wonder how you're going to find the time to do it, and what will get lost in the process. And I know that your love lies in planning and regen. I never understood that, but I'm sure those that love planning and regen, that's where they are. So how do you think your previous experience as Deputy Mayor for Planning and Regen and your experience with Hackney Council can contribute to this specific role?
Well, I've been involved in the oversight of public services for coming up towards 30 years. When I became the leader of Hackney Council, it was, and then a year later, the elected mayor. At that point, it was beyond any doubt or argument, rightly branded the worst local authority in the country. No services worked. And it wasn't just a financial issue, which was always what people tend to concentrate on. It was the fact that the vital services that people rely on were failing. And so in my time there, which was, say, 4 years as councillor prior to being leader, but then being responsible for taking the authority forward, it went to a well-regarded council that both on audit commission measures and, if one puts any store by them, awards from the likes of Local Government Chronicle and the Municipal Journal and things, but crucially the view of peers within local government and national government of both political persuasions. It was regarded as a high-performing council, and of course that journey involved an awful lot of engagement with inspectorates, improvement boards, the performance management of the authority, and in a similar kind of oversight way. I wasn't a manager. I'm not a manager, but I think I understand the role of the layperson appointed to give oversight on behalf of, well, if one's directly elected, then it's the electorate. In my position, I've been appointed, if the panel willing, I'll have been appointed by the mayor to apply that same role as I did in Hackney. I went on to be involved in improvement in other authorities by invitation by the LGA and others. I've been a member of CPA, Corporate Performance Assessment visits, team visits to other authorities. I was recommended by the appointments panel to be on the board of the Audit Commission, but that was subsequently blocked, so that didn't go forward. But nevertheless, I was sufficiently well regarded as having a knowledge and an experience with improvement and performance of public services to have been in that position.
Okay, I accept that. I've been around local government and I have watched, and I agree with that. But given that, what do you see as the main issue that the Commissioner is facing, and actually the fire brigade itself? What are the main issues if you're looking at it?
Yeah, I briefly touched on them earlier. And obviously there is the practical performance issue of the fire brigade that is similar to any service with training needs that perhaps haven't been met sufficiently in the past, that has perhaps not sufficient, not necessarily under-resourced, but hasn't invested in the latest technology, for example, and that came up very much through the Grenfell inquiry phase 1, as you know. Communications, and so that was both equipment purchase, but also training in the way that communications ought to flow in emergency situations. So clearly there's a job for the Commissioner there to make sure that not only are the recommendations being implemented in as much as activity to address them, but the fact that they're achieved. And then there's the other half that I touched on, which I think is the is frankly going to be harder, which is culture. And I'm very familiar with that in public services, about the need for culture change and leadership from the very top in which to secure that. And that can't be just the top, meaning the commissioner. That's got to flow down through the tiers below, all the way down to the stations.
I agree, but the watch culture is something that you and I in local government have never ever come across before.
Yeah,
and it's a very strong knit unit, and that is where the problems are based.
I entirely agree. I was going to go on to say that whilst sort of leadership and culture issues are not unusual in large complex organisations, and those being negative issues in organisations that have gone through difficulties. The fire brigade, the London Fire Brigade, is, and perhaps any fire brigade, is perhaps unique in the fact that the cultures, as you say, at the watch level have become so entrenched over a long period of time, and the fact that the way they're generated must be unique, other than perhaps in the army, where you have a set body of people in close contact the whole time, living together, eating together. I think anywhere it's possible for kind of that's small closed communities to develop negative behaviours, but it's unusual that we allow those kind of situations to arise. That's I think what's unusual, and I absolutely recognise what you say, and inevitably, what compounds this even further is that the very thing that gives rise to these issues also gives rise to a defensiveness, and people want to close ranks.
And there's a very, very strong union there. I'm mindful of the time, but that it is a completely unique set of circumstances. And my biggest concern is the fact that you have got now such a massive amount to do. And one part of it is on a subject that, with the greatest respect, you've never had to delve into before. But I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And Assembly Hall Assembly Member Hall makes a very important point about the time commitment to this role. We had a predecessor who, excuse me. I think I'll carry on later. Assembly Member Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I've got some questions, but I just wanted to follow up on the questions around organisational culture and the culture review, because of how crucial it is. And obviously there are some specificities about it, but every organisation culture that needs to be changed has its own specificities. So could you tell us a bit more about what your approach would be in driving that culture change, or continuing to drive that culture change, and what experience you have of changing culture of organisations?
Well, as I say, the best example is Hackney, because I was there for 15 years, and cultural change was, at the heart of delivering the better performance from the authority. I don't want to kind of draw too close to parallels, but for example, at the time I took over, the local authority was under a non-discrimination notice from the CRE. And that is serious, and as serious for a local authority to be in as having the kind of the self-generated cultural review that the LFB had, and there were various steps that we had. I had to go through along with the chief executive, and it was a partnership, if you like. We had different roles and different responsibilities, but I think it's always crucial in these situations that the lay person with oversight comes at it from at least shares the view and the vision of the problem and the vision of the solution as the same as the employed chief executive, or in this case, commissioner. I think there's always room for disagreement about approach and all sorts of things, but I think you're lost if, from at the beginning, you can't even, agree that the sky's blue or not. So I think a shared view, which there is, of the problems facing the service, and as I say, that's how I address things in Hackney. As a working in an open way with the people making the judgments. To understand exactly the outcomes that we need to secure, working with all the different players and ensuring that the management is working with all the relevant different players. As I say, I'm not a manager. It's not there for me to interpose myself between management and others. I am there to, I think, ask questions, and when I think that the commissioner and his team is getting it right, to show my support for them, that they're doing that. So on the culture review, the changes as they apply the changes that they will, I think it's my job to in front of the rest of the service is to strengthen their arm in delivering those changes. But elsewhere it will be to challenge the effectiveness of what the team are doing.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Thank you. And my next questions were going to be about how you're going to balance the roles, the role you already have, or the slightly smaller role that you already have, and your new responsibilities. They have sort of fairly substantially been covered by Assemblymember Hall already. But I think one aspect that we haven't is, of course, the fire service is a 24-hour service. Obviously, you're not going to be out with them, so that's not. But that is a different dynamic than the planning and regeneration, although I am sure that you're on call substantially anyway. But with that dynamic of it being 24-hour and being an emergency service, have you considered how you're going to balance those priorities and what changes it may require from your approach to how you manage your work?
It's really nothing that is new to me after Hackney Council. Everything from the longest siege that ever happened in British history, it all happened in Hackney. There was always something, and those somethings didn't always happen between 9 and 5. So yes, I'm absolutely, I'm not fazed by emergency situations or unexpected things that, even if they're not a threat to life and limb, but they have to be dealt with, and they're not presenting themselves between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday. Yeah. That's.
Do you think there's any? I suppose how do you put this? The rhythm of work between planning and regeneration, which obviously a lot of it is long-term work, looking very far in the future, and then things that will pop up in a more emergency way. Do you think that will pull against each other, and how are you going to make sure you continue to appropriately prioritise? So.
I'm struggling just because I haven't had to articulate what I've been doing and explain what I've done for the last 30 years, really. I mean, as I say, yes. I can only offer the actual doing rather than my description of it. As I say, my time at Hackney, whilst I was at Hackney, I then took on being chair of London Councils. That wasn't a one day a month role, and I did that for 6 years. Between 2010 and 2016, and also I would be selling the planning and regeneration team short if I was to leave anyone with the impression that they need kind of like constant nursing by me. So again, there's very good teams there.
Okay, thanks.
And also, I suppose I should point out that Skills was a 330 million pound AEB budget, and then probably another 60-70 million pounds of other money, and there was always constant churn in policy that had to be addressed, and so there was a fair bit of things to be signed off, new policies to be engaged with, speech making to college, sector conferences, which all took time and had to be fitted in because they were around other people's events and diaries, not mine. So again, I'll be losing a bit that already had those kind of demands that weren't in my control.
Yeah, no. I mean, I hope no one's calling you at 3 a.m. with a skills emergency, though. But no. Yes, no, absolutely, no, doing down that portfolio, and that's all from me.
Let me through. I'm a planner.
Thank you. I remember to get your number on speed dial, and I won't do that. Assembly Member Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm following with a tradition of Assemblymember Hall taking some of Assemblymember Baker's questions. She's taken my questions, so that's fine. We're all in this together. But it's good. I suppose in all of this, you've been asked sort of a number of times in different ways how you deal with sort of the conflicts between the roles and time management between the roles. But I think there's something here, though, when I was kind of reading the description of your role, and I wonder if you could just expand on it a bit. But it's how the roles actually work together.
As in fire and my existing? Yeah. Well, that's something actually that I see this as an opportunity to get to grips with, because there has inevitably been a fair bit of siloed working, and not just within GLA but just nationally. You've got government policy, you've got building control, you've got the new building gateway, the fire gateways, you've got the, and all overlapping. Then we've got the interests, obviously, from our own housing and land team, building safety team. And it would be good to try and find a way. We tried to find a way through that with D12 in the London plan about having, high standards of fire safety, and that just being established at the outset rather than people trying to bolt it on at a later stage in the final designs of the buildings. So I do see this as an opportunity to try and perhaps disentangle some of that and certainly bring some sort of coherence to it, because at the end of the day out there, I think the big thing is confusion, and then where we end up with then on individual applications is probably something of a fudge that is unhelpful. It's unhelpful to everybody. It's unhelpful to the applicants, and I think the important thing is that we do get to a point of establishing the safety of buildings, but it's the lack of clarity in the process.
I agree with you. It's lack of clarity, and it's also that I think sometimes when we have sort of changing landscapes of what's permissible, what's not permissible, and a lot of that is rightly to do with fire safety. It's a lack of clarity. I mean, it leads to land banking and building sites not being developed. And I live right around the corner from one. It's an awful eyesore, and it ultimately ends up with more expense and perhaps even less quality throughout our building schemes. So I'd be excited for you to explore that more if you are to be appointed.
As an example, I'll give is that it took quite a while to kind of for it to be revealed. I mean, that's less dramatic than that, but or to be understood. That's a better word. For it to be understood about the different types of responses the brigade were being asked for and then given. And sometimes there are letters in existence that say there are no issues with the building, and all they were responding to really the things about the space for fire appliances outside and the kind of standard checklist. And meanwhile, there could be some really fundamental issues within the building, such as where the staircase ended up in proximity to the underground car park, which actually someone else was addressing, and if and when they were going to be asked to write the letter, they would have said, we have some serious concerns. Eventually they get resolved, but just having those two things and it not being resolved in a timely way is, as you absolutely say, is hugely problematic.
Yes. So how will you work with the Deputy Mayor for Housing? in your role? Or how do you anticipate that working?
As always, very closely. Tom is, probably the deputy mayor that, and I suppose and environment, the ones that obviously there's the greatest input into the areas that I cover. I mean, really, I've always seen the London plan though as obviously it's the spatial framework for how London should develop if there is sufficient desire to build and investment in infrastructure, and it shows where it can be built, how it ought to be built, and the book itself is effectively sort of the amalgamation, the synthesis of all the sort of diverse demands from all the different areas. So obviously culture has its demands, and environment does on net zero, and obviously Tom needs to get people housed, and of course sometimes those policies work together, sometimes they're in opposition, and the process of the plan is to try and find a compromise. Is a horrible word, but that's effectively what it is, especially when things are in direct conflict with one another. So that's necessitated a good working relationship with all the deputy mayors from the day I started.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, just final one from me, and I'll hand back to the chair. You have been asked this in a different way, but not in full. But what do you anticipate, quite apart from the time commitment, what do you anticipate will be the top challenges for you in this role?
Well, I suppose what would keep me up at night is the confidence that change is being made down the line. Because at the end of the day, performance management in a sort of a pyramidal structured organisation, things are fed up through that pyramid. Yes, there will be inspections. Yes, there will be encounters on the ground, but people can be on their best behaviour. Some of the things we've been talking about are not going to be on display when I turn up to a fire station, as I will do. But so it's how you get that feedback to know it's genuinely the case. So obviously there are things about sort of those kind of softer mechanisms about whistleblowing and reporting, informal reporting back that you can believe and trust and that seems real, and not just the formal, to sort of stress test the formal processes, for example. And I would want to see that those are in place. As just as an example, one example of other, but as I say, I would want to establish with Andy for me to understand and have confidence that what he and I are being told is real all the way down the chain to the watch level. I suppose my other concern is speed. If willing it could be so, then everything would be fine the next day. Some of these attitudes are going to be hard to change and take time to change in any setting, let alone the challenging setting we've already talked about. And churn is not high, apart from the people actually who are the victims and who we wouldn't want to leave. But so my second concern would be the speed at which we can achieve this that satisfies all of us, and all of us would want this done tomorrow. Achieved tomorrow, finished, completed, but it's a process, and so how long that process is going to take is probably my biggest concern, along with the establishing the veracity of the positive stories I will no doubt hear over the coming months.
Thank you. We have been mixing around the questions and covering each other, so I'm minded to know that most of Assembly members here will have their own questions as well. So, Assembly Member Told, you're next, and if you want to delve deeper into that question, that's fine, or move on.
Well,
which is, do you consider the issue of fire safety buildings, including the removal of flammable cladding from multi-storey residential properties, part of your role as Deputy Mayor for Fire?
Well, the building safety team isn't up. It isn't under me. That's under Tom Copley, Deputy Mayor for Housing and Residential Development. But clearly, the brigade has a huge interest in that, and I would want to see that those people taking the remediation forward, and particularly where it has stalled, I think it would be a positive thing that the brigade is involved in strengthening their arm in delivering that.
I think we've touched upon it a bit on this, so I'm afraid we touched it, but looking at this portfolio, so to speak, it doesn't seem like these elements sit particularly naturally together. Is that something you would agree with or disagree with? How will you address that?
I remember when I got planning, regeneration and skills, and I thought that was kind of quite... But it's funny, people always manage to see the kind of positive. You know, they said, oh, regeneration skills, yeah, I can see you're trying to get people employed out of regeneration. And likewise, often people have said to me on this announcement, and numerous people have said, oh, yeah, I can absolutely see the building safety kind of connections. Now, in truth, actually, as I've said, the building safety isn't under me, but I think that for many people, it does seem to evoke a response of that there is a natural link there. But I come back to my role at Hackney. I was accountable for the performance of a whole very wide range of services, and just had to go with that, and I see no different here. I personally, I don't have a problem with the kind of the what is essentially a diversity in the two areas.
Thank you. What do you think is going to be the biggest burden on your time, shall we say, or take up most of your time? The correcting some of the issues that we've found of financial with the fire service and taking that forward, or the updates to the London plan are due?
I think both areas. In both areas, I'm going to be well supported. The planning policy team is very good in the planning team, and I've mentioned the GLA's fire team, which is expanding slightly. So that's going to provide good support for me in terms of marshalling the paperwork, asking the questions, getting the responses for me and chasing up. I'll be in the fortunate position of not having to do that all myself alone. To be frank, I think probably the most difficult thing that I've always had is trying to fit time to get away from the desk to go and do things. That's the trickiest thing. Because obviously journey times and things, it can lose you a whole half day doing them. But I think that's a vital thing to do, and I'm looking forward to doing it. I'm discussing a few ideas with people about how I can do this and perhaps bring it a bit to life in how I do that, rather than just turn up in a suit and nod politely at them and go, and just engage a bit more. Certainly, at the station level.
Final question from me then is, what's one thing you really didn't want us to ask you today?
I've already touched on it, actually. It's how long do you think it will take to implement and achieve all the XX? It's not something like the changes in the culture review, and it would be reckless at this point, having been in sort of less than 2 weeks, to put a date on that. But as I say, you know, it can't come soon enough, and everyone would wish it was like tomorrow, as would I. But as I say, it's unrealistic to think that you can change entrenched attitudes in what sadly could be hundreds of people overnight.
Thank you. I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much. We are going to be joined by Assembly Member Polanski online. Hopefully he's ready.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry I'm not there in person. Deputy Mayor, what is the biggest opportunity for the Deputy Mayor of Fire for this coming term?
Do you need that repeated?
Oh, sorry, I thought we'd lost him. One of the biggest... it suddenly stopped and I couldn't hear what that last couple of words were.
Assembly Member Polanski, could you repeat that question? We weren't quite clear on whether you finished or not.
Of course. What is the biggest opportunity for the Deputy Mayor for Fire for this coming term?
The biggest opportunity?
Yes. Yep.
Well, I confess, actually, I've been considering it in terms of the challenges, really, rather than opportunity. Could you flesh out your question, perhaps, about where you were interested in going, so I don't go down some cul-de-sac of an answer that you're not interested in?
No, it's exactly that. So the whole meeting's been about the challenges, but I'm just wondering if there's a moment you want to seize, or there's something where you think this is a window where we can absolutely achieve this in this term.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a fortunate position to be in, to come in to have oversight of a service that I think has been served very well by my predecessor, and who has kind of uncovered the issues. Because I think that's kind of quite a negative thing to have to experience in an oversight and leadership role, to be the person that does. It's the uncovering of the things on your watch, and that takes a lot of personal resilience, I think, to do that, and then to be up for the processes of proper uncovering, such as the culture review and then the Grenfell inquiry. And I am very fortunate, I think, and so I suppose I could see this as an opportunity that we're embarking on a period of improvement and renewal, both in terms of the core service of fire delivery, as I say, through the Grenfell recommendations, and then also one of kind of root and branch cultural reform as a result of the cultural review. So if I hadn't till now really kind of thought of describing them as an opportunity, but as I say, I think that's a very positive starting point, and I consider myself kind of privileged to be doing it from that point, that I come at the time where there are roadmaps that will inevitably be stress tested over the coming months and years, but nevertheless there are roadmaps there on both practical delivery and internal cultural delivery.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And on that point of positivity, I think we want to emphasise the fact that this is an incredible role, and it's a real privilege and honour to have this role. I think that's reflected in the questions that we've asked you today, and I hope that going forward you realise that that's the way we'll be scrutinising you as well, because this is a role that I think all of the members here absolutely love this committee. We value everything that the London Fire Brigade do for this city, and also the massive area of work that we need to do to make things better for firefighters and for Londoners generally. One of the things I just wanted to emphasise was that we've talked a lot about commitment of time. The role that the former Deputy Mayor played was not always to do with desk work, for example. You've mentioned this already, but also the ceremonial part of the role, being at award ceremonies, taking part in Pride, very active part of that role. Is that something that you'll be doing as well?
A number of them are already in the diary.
Good, excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing you at all of those events as well. And just one last thing that I've was very much involved with, which was the campaign on lithium-ion batteries, which I'm sure you're very well aware of, which was a big part of the work that we did here at the committee in the last term. But going forward, I'd like to know what your aims are in terms of making sure that this is a campaign that's not forgotten, that we continue the work on that. There could be a different government, we don't know, but going forward, where do you see your role in playing a part to make sure that there is change for all the legislation involved in this particular area?
Yeah, I think it's a really important campaign, and it's one that has a lot of arms to it, because it's not just about raising awareness with the public, as important as that is. There's a lot that should be done at sort of national legislative level in terms of trading standards and so on, to kind of to address this. It's not just the batteries; it's also the chargers too. You can have perfectly good batteries, but actually using a cheap charger that doesn't have the right circuitry in it. Again, thermal runaway, and we've seen the videos of what happens. It's something I think we've just seen the tip of it, as the tip of the iceberg on this, because there's only going to be an ever-increasing number of scooters and e-bikes available going forward. London, one of the most dense cities. People living in flats, people charging them in hallways. I'm absolutely with you. I absolutely realise how crucial this is. There's also, I won't go into them, there's all sorts of analogies you could do this, that if you drew them and you say, well, you'd never do that, yet storing cans of petrol in your cupboard at the bottom of your stairs or something, you just never do that, yet we are doing an equivalent with lithium-ion batteries.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad that you see that level of public awareness role that we play here in City Hall, raising these issues is a really vital, important part of your job as well. Well, thank you. I think we've covered it. If there's any other Assembly member who'd like to come in with any extra questions, I think we have come to the end. So thank you very much, Jules Pipe, for attending today's meeting.
Thank you very much.
You may now leave the meeting, but strangely enough, you can actually observe the rest of the meeting and discussion from the public gallery, if you wish.
Unfortunately, I have something I need to go to. So, but I will.
You're a busy man.
I will be in contact with the others who will be remaining here.
Okay, well, keep in touch, and thank you very much. The committee is now required to make a decision on its recommendation to the Mayor as to whether or not the nominee should be appointed to the office of Deputy Mayor for Fire. There are three possible outcomes. Now, I'm now going to be asking for views across, if there's any additional views at all from Assembly members. No, you need to make an exit soon. Thank you. Okay, so there are three possible resolutions. The first being that we agree to recommend the Mayor should proceed with the appointment of Jules Pipe to the office of Deputy Mayor for Fire. Then the second is that it's agreed that we do not object to the appointment to Jules Pipe as Deputy Mayor for Fire, but to write to the Mayor to provide a comment regarding the proposed appointment. And the other option is the Fire Committee hereby resolve to veto. So there are three options there. My proposal is that we go for option 2, and there is some wording that we have sent out already. So can I ask the committee to approve that it is to be agreed not to object to the appointment of Jules Pipe as Deputy Mayor? Oh, we have a comment.
I agree with you, and I agree with the wording of this, absolutely. But can we just put something in there around his time, for his sake, if nothing else? Just that we have concerns that he will have enough time to do this.
So we can add that in now, just before we finalise. Yeah. It does have here the Deputy Mayor for fire will have
it does.
Sufficient time. Do you want to add anything to that particular line?
No, okay, leave it at that. I mean, I'm concerned for I do think he's a very
I think
good
you've got a very valid
person,
point. So
but
shall we make that emphasis
concerned.
stronger?
I wonder how we can, because if he was doing 5 days, 5+ days doing his job, which I can believe because he's very good at that. Yeah, fine.
Yep, can I read that? Yep. Okay, so we'll go back to what I need to say officially. Can I ask the committee to approve that it's agreed not to object to the appointment of Jules Pipe as Deputy Mayor for Fire, but to write to the Mayor to provide comments regarding the proposed appointment as follows. And here is the wording. The committee would like to be assured that the Deputy Mayor for Fire role will have sufficient time and priority when taking on this role, in addition to planning and regeneration. And what's the added welfare of the candidate?
And have concern for the welfare?
And have concern for the welfare of the candidate.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yes? Are we all agreed with that?
Yeah.
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 Okay. The committee notes the continuing significant change programme being taken forward by London Fire Brigade, including responding to the culture review, the Grenfell Tower Phase 2 report, which will be published in September, and the next full inspection of the London Fire Brigade takes place this summer, so we will look forward to the Deputy Mayor for Fire playing a lead role in supporting the Brigade and Commissioner in addressing issues arising from these. All agreed? Okay, so thank you. A letter will be sent to the Mayor following this meeting to confirm the committee's recommendation, and that concludes today's meeting.
Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the